All right, I'll say that again. Welcome, everyone. Get that on the recording. Thanks for showing up. I don't know if we are going to be missing anybody else from the.
I thought Chris was going to be here too.
Chris had made a comment yesterday when we saw him that he was going to join online if he could. He had a network internet thing at work that he was having done. So
that's right. I do not see him. I don't see anybody else.
So he may join later. Nicole. I haven't heard from. I don't think you've heard from anybody else, Paul Reed or
actually if I have a beer right now. So
thank you. Later.
Thank you.
But why don't we go ahead and get going? And why don't we go around the room and just introduce ourselves? And we have some audience in the cheap seats back there for now, and we can Peanut Gallery, yeah, and we can talk about that later. But and I know we just talked yesterday. Jeremy Pietzel here. I'm the chair of the Economic Development Committee, and go around the room.
Bill Schwartz, I own Boring Brewing Company.
Laura Smallwood.
Representing the council.
Yeah, representing the council, sorry.
Hans Whipper, owner of Whipper Snappers Kids Play Place.
Marcel Bracci, owner of AEC Inc. and one of the commercial buildings in town.
And we're just introducing ourselves.
Oh, my name's Greg Brewster, IT director for the city of Sandy.
Go ahead.
Aaron Ferguson. I work for Trumbull Rentals here in town.
All right. And then David Snyder.
Yep, Dave Snyder, staff liaison.
Oh, very good.
I have been since I have a kid.
So thanks. We never get an audience, so that's nice to have an audience today. But why don't we go ahead and get going? And we have a guest speaker, so we'll get to that soon. And sorry, I gotta put my glasses on because I'm looking at the wrong agenda. But why don't we first? Is there any public comment? Seeing no public comment, we'll move on. Approval of the minutes. So we have approval of June 23rd and September. June 23rd. June of 2023 and September of 2023. If there's anything that needs to be changed in those. And I know that Lori already mentioned she was absent from
Both of them, so.
both of them.
So I'll abstain.
She will abstain from the vote. And does that give us a quorum to be able to vote on still? A quorum can still include the person that's not voting.
Yeah, correct.
You
You
have
just
a
have the
quorum in the
majority
room.
of members, I believe.
Right.
Who are we missing?
Well,
Chris,
well,
Stan.
no, Chris, Stan, and Lori, are you actually members or are you
Yes.
liaisons?
No, they're
Oh.
members.
Members.
Okay, I just make sure.
Because this board is different.
Yeah,
Correct.
this board
Yeah,
is.
this is a unique board.
Yeah, it's a unique board. Okay, so, and we're missing Paul.
Yes, so that's
And we're
9.
missing one other person
Who?
Chris.
that hasn't shown up,
Oh, Robbie.
Robbie.
Yeah.
So number wise, does that make it?
So unfortunately, no. That gives us 5 and 5.
Okay, so we will postpone that to the next meeting. Sound good?
Or later, somebody shows up.
Or
Or later,
if
somebody
somebody shows up, we'll slip that in the middle of the meeting.
Oh, wait.
Does Chris come home?
There. Oh, looky what we have here. Mr. Mayton.
All right, Nicole, bear with us while we finish our logistics here.
No
Okay.
problem.
Promoting him to panelist, and there he is.
Oh,
There he
there he
goes.
is.
Oh,
He
he
was.
goes away.
Chris, can you hear us? And there he is. Fantastic.
Can you hear us, Chris?
Oh, you're muted, buddy.
You're muted.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
And with Chris's joining of the board, we do now have a quorum.
Thanks for making a quorum here.
Let me jump in real quick. I've got to, I'm doing it in the middle of a MSP cutover right now. So I'll be jumping in and out. So if I turn my video off, you'll know, but I'll leave it on listening if I have to, okay?
Okay, we're gonna quickly take a vote of minutes for the June 23rd and September 23rd, since you're on right now and you make a quorum. So I'll just I'll make the motion myself. All those in favor of approving the minutes for both June 23rd and September 23rd, say aye.
Except it's actually
Aye.
6.
Oh, it's June of 23 and
Oh,
September.
June,
23. Yeah.
sorry, June. Opposed? Hearing none, absentee,
Yeah.
abstentions, Lori, thank you.
So we
Okay,
have
they're passed and.
5 in favor, 1 abstention.
Thanks, I know they're really controversial minutes. All right,
Excellent.
so why don't we, we're gonna skip right down and come back, and we'll let Nicole go next, so we can be respectful of her time and get her onto her night of fun.
Okay. One moment here, Nicole, I'll pull up your presentation.
All right. I wanted to say, Councillor Smallwood and Mayton, you get to listen to this a second time because we already presented this to the council, so lucky you. I know you're very excited about that. All right.
From the beginning.
Thank you. While he's getting this set up, I'm just going to quickly introduce myself. I'm Nicole Underwood, and I am from Echo Northwest. We've been working on the city's economic opportunity analysis. This is part of the broader comprehensive plan update that the city is undergoing. And so we are a sub-consultant working on this piece. So you can move to the next slide, David. And as we go through this presentation, I can't really see any of you. What I'd like to do is just have you ask questions as we move through. So David, if you could just help pause me. I do tend to just get going and just keep going. So please pause me if there's questions, and I can answer them as we move along. And so, as I said before, we've been working with the city on this economic opportunity analysis for a little while. The EOA is a background report of the Envision Sandy 2050 and comprehensive plan update process. This and other reports form the factual basis for updating comprehensive plan policies. And so, and like I said, tonight we'll be talking about the EOA as a background report, and then we'll be coming back to this this committee in either January or February, and we'll start talking about the comprehensive plan policies as they relate to economic development. Next slide, please. And I just, for some reason, had two schedules in here, but this is just another way of looking at that schedule. So we'll move on to the next slide and the next one. There we go. So why do an EOA? There are several reasons why the city needs to do this. One reason being you're meeting statewide requirements for planning for the economy, and so specifically Goal 9 of Oregon's land use planning goals. The EOA provides information on existing conditions and helps forecast future conditions to inform things like the Economic Development Strategic Plan, land use policies, and provide support for doing the coordination necessary for economic development. And as a part of this process, David, Kelly, and other members of city staff have really been heavily supporting this process. So we are planning for long-term growth in an EOA. We coordinated very closely with the development of this was coordinated very closely with the development of the Economic Development Strategic Plan. And so this was to make sure that both the EOA and the Economic Development Strategic Plan both point in the same direction and result in policies that are consistent with each other. And so you should see some of the target industries and that kind of thing reflected there. So this is intended to forecast growth over the next 20 years. Next slide, please. So what does the city get out of this process? The city gets the background report, the economic opportunity analysis, and this meets the requirements of Goal 9. And then you'll also get recommendations for comprehensive plan changes. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm just going to pause for a second and see if there's any questions about what we're doing with and why we're doing an EOA. If not, I'm going to move on to the buildable lands inventory.
I think we're good.
Good. Okay. Okay, so an important part of understanding your economic opportunities is understanding how much buildable land you have in Sandy for commercial and industrial uses. And so where we start is with all land in Sandy designated for employment. So your commercial plan designations, your industrial, and then your village commercial, and you can see those all highlighted here. Next slide, please.
What is the village commercial? What is that?
It was a concept designed 25 years ago, 30 years
Is that
ago.
a
that
Lazenby thing?
didn't really pan out as well.
What
What
it's,
is-
what it's supposed to be is mixed use, so residential and commercial.
Okay,
I believe very soon it'll be going away. I think council.
and it's just
figured it
that
out
little teeny
altogether.
tiny spot way south.
Actually, there's
There's a-
several
there's a few.
spots.
There's
Go back
actually a
one
couple, there's one on the, she doesn't have it on the map right here, but when you look at the UGB, there's actually some on Bluff. Or not on Bluff, but off of Jewelberry back toward the back
Okay.
and whatnot, so.
Right up here where DeBarco, if it came to 26, there's some there. Right there at Kelso and Bluff. Yeah, and then Bornstead is another big one.
Yeah.
The idea being kind of like North Portland area where you
If
have a
you-
lot of housing and then you have a place to go buy milk.
Or like if you've ever been to a Renco station where you have the residential and then you have the commercial mixed use inside with stores and things like that, so.
Within the
Just go to
residential area.
commercial instead of village commercial.
I'm not really sure.
What's that?
Would it just go to commercial then?
Or
instead
just
of-
residential.
Or just residential. They're pinned into residential
Yeah.
area neighborhoods. And later code changed to add actually the residential above the commercial. 20 years ago, I think it was just plain commercial because we didn't have that at the time. But yeah, the idea was to, have a little spot to, like a bar or a go get milk, a little grocery store. or
Convenience store or
convenience
daycare.
store. These
Neighborhood
days,
daycare.
Amazon has really changed that, but I'll let the experts speak.
Thanks.
Sorry for that little detour, Nicole.
No, that's great. I love learning about what's going on in village commercial. All right, so we've established our plan designations, our areas where employment will happen. Then we look at constraints. And so this is things like steep slopes, floodplains, floodways. You have an FSH overlay. You have a BPA easement that goes through the north part of town. And then there's, other constraints that prohibit development on the land. And so based on the employment land that we just saw on the previous map, we identify land that is vacant or developed, or some variant of that. So, such as a large parcel that has space for additional development would be considered partially vacant. And so then we figure out of the vacant land, what is unconstrained. And if you want to move on to the next next slide. So this map shows vacant, unconstrained land by comprehensive plan designation. We can see here that you have a fair bit of commercial land and some industrial land that is vacant and unconstrained, mostly to the north. You have some village commercial, but not much that is vacant and unconstrained. And you can see in areas like the industrial and commercial land to the north, you have some parcels that have a lot of constraints on them. And that's what you see as like the little fingering going through there. And these constraints make it difficult to develop some of this land, and in some cases may make it very difficult to develop some of this land. Next slide, please. So when we bring this all together, we can see the total unconstrained buildable acres that Sandy has is 191. Over 70% of that land is in commercial, and that's mostly in the general commercial zone. So this breaks down into about 132 acres of vacant unconstrained buildable land in commercial, 54 acres in industrial, and 6 acres in village commercial. And we will be looping back to these numbers in just a little bit when we look at sufficiency of land. But before I move on, are there any questions about this so far?
I think we're good, Nicole.
Good, let's keep going. Okay, next slide. So moving on to the demand side, we've got growth opportunities and forecast. And so to understand employment growth and opportunities, unsurprisingly, we start with data on employment in Sandy. So the data here is based on 2019 QCEW data about employment in Sandy. We use 2019 rather than 2020 data because 2020 data wasn't that great. And we didn't have 2021 data available yet. That has come out since, but it was not available when we did this study. And so what we see here is that Sandy has about 3,753 covered employees, covered being employees that are covered by unemployment insurance. And so then looking at those employees, we can see that the majority are in sectors like retail trade, recreation, accommodation, and food service, industries that are very tourism related. The yellow line that you see on this slide is the average wage, the average city wage. And so Sandy's average city wage in 2019 was just over $37,000. And this is in comparison to Clackamas County, which had an average wage of $54,800. So this, this graphic does show a lot. Retail, trade, and recreation have below city average wages. Then you have sectors like government, healthcare, and manufacturing. Government and manufacturing have above average pay. And so, what we're trying to show here is this gives a look at Sandy's employment kind of from a broad perspective. We do have a lot more detail on employment by sector in the actual EOA, but I just wanted to provide this so you can see where we're starting when we think about employment opportunities in Sandy. Next slide, please. So we look at things like commuting trends as well, and this helps us understand how Sandy fits within the regional economy. What we see as of 2019 is that Sandy has about 3,700 people who work in Sandy. About 750 people, or 20% of jobs in Sandy, are held by people who live and work in Sandy, and that's at the bottom of the graph. And just over 2,900 people live outside of the city and commute into Sandy to work. And then there's about 5,229 people who live in Sandy and commute out of Sandy for work. And then, of course, there's people who live in Sandy and do not have employment, and they're not reflected here. So common places where Sandy residents are commuting to include Portland, Gresham, and to a lesser extent, Beaverton. There's other places as well, but they were even smaller percentages than what were here. Next slide, please.
That doesn't take into consideration work from home, right?
Work from home's a challenging one. I don't think we are able to see it very well in the data, how that's affected some of these trends yet. I do know that for some, like in my company, some people work from home, and if you primarily work from home, you are captured potentially, you're supposed to be captured in that data for that area. I think it gets more challenging is that sometimes people are working from home part of the time, and then they're going to the office the other part of the time. And so I'm not really sure how that's going to pan out and how that will look in the data right now. But theoretically, if you strictly work from home, that is likely where you should be captured.
So Nicole, just to be clear, that 753 at the bottom, that doesn't include anybody who works from home?
Well, that's what I'm saying. If they primarily work from home, if they only work from home, I think it might.
Oh,
okay. If they say, so for somebody like me, I work in the office about 2 days a week, but the rest of the time I work from home. And so I work in Portland, but I live in Lake Oswego. I think I'm captured in the Portland data. But for people in my firm who only work in Vancouver, even though there's not an office there, they would be captured in like Vancouver data. So this is a challenging question that I think is going to be better answered in the years to come. But right now it is a little unclear how that is captured.
Yeah, because I'd be curious how they capture that, because like where I work, people, we change the policy and now, oh yeah, you're working from home, but no one's reporting that. You're still reported as the address of our location where you're at.
But
Yeah.
just real quick though, this is 2019. Those numbers are 2019 data, right? So they're
Yes.
have a large work from home population at that time.
That's true.
So
Yeah. And I think I looked at 2021 data or I don't even know if actually, I don't think it's out for this one yet. They had 2020 data and that data wasn't very good. I am curious to see what the shift looks like. But it is going to depend on how employers are categorizing their people. And so certainly people that only work from home for tax reasons are generally recorded as working in that spot because you have to pay, if it's a different state, you've got to pay those taxes differently. But yes, I will be looking into this just in the future as well.
Yeah. And I don't even know if I trust 21 data. I'd rather have 22.
Yeah, me too. And I think for Sandy particularly, this is going to be an interesting question because of this slide. You've got SandyNet, which is definitely attractive for people who are working from home. You've got a high quality of life and you've got access to outdoor recreation. Sandy's a desirable location for people who work from home. So I think that this question is particularly relevant to Sandy. And I know that's something that is reflected in your strategic plan as well, is attracting those work from home people. But in the context of this planning effort, it's just a reminder that we are focused on the need for commercial and industrial land. And so people that are working from home maybe won't need that space. Maybe they're working partially in the office, but that would be my understanding, more need for residential if they're working from home. But anyway, I'm gonna just switch gears to talk about the advantage for economic development in Sandy. And so another way to put this is, why would a business locate in Sandy? And so some of the main things that came up was that you're near Portland, but you're not Portland. You are, which is tied closely to your quality of life. You have access to the Portland metro region, but you also have all this wonderful access to recreation and a high quality of life. Sandy is a commercial center in East Clackamas County. As far as transportation, Sandy has access to Highway 26, and then the transit does provide some advantage as well. I mentioned before SandyNet. I think that is a very strong advantage, particularly for people who work from home, but also businesses. And then because of your proximity to the Portland metro region, you do have access to a rather larger labor market at different various career stages. And then the Sandy Community Campus has come up as a potential advantage in the future. Depending upon what the city puts there, it could be a really great amenity. And then, as I said before, your access to outdoor recreation and proximity to Mount Hood really is beneficial for tourism, but also for residents and boosting that quality of life. Next slide, please. So then on the flip side, we have to ask, why would a business not want to locate in Sandy? And so some of the reasons for that could be that you're not near an interstate. So certain types of businesses that need that interstate access would be discouraged from locating there. And so that's things like, a warehouse and distribution center, a large warehouse and distribution center, Highway 26 is unlikely to really meet their needs. Traffic and congestion is a problem. Housing affordability is also a disadvantage for economic development. This is not a Sandy specific problem. This is a problem across the metro and state, but it does create problems for economic development. Sandy has limited industrial land, and much of the land that is industrial does have constraints on it. We've also heard that there's a shortage of childcare providers. Again, that is more of a statewide problem, but it certainly impacts Sandy as well. We've heard that there's a need for more healthcare services. This will be particularly relevant as the population ages. And then Sandy has limited retail shopping opportunities, and this includes things like big box stores. Where are people going to meet their needs? Do they have to go to Gresham to get some of these things? Wildfire risk, certainly can't underestimate the challenges there. You have a BPA easement that goes through a good portion of your unconstrained developable, well, it's not unconstrained, but you have a good the BPA easement goes through some of your land. And then you have difficult terrain to develop infrastructure. Again, there are a number of cities that struggle with this as well, but it certainly creates a disadvantage. And then, so now moving on to the employment forecast, unless, did anybody have any comments on the advantages or disadvantages? Any big things that we're missing?
I think you nailed it.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Okay. Good, perfect. So when we did the employment forecast, we started with the employment base in 2019. So for total employment, not just the covered, which I showed you earlier, we estimated that there were approximately 5,100 jobs in 2019. We assume those jobs grew at the rates that you can see here. So in 2023, we're looking at a starting employment base of between 5,400 and 5,500 jobs. And that's because we're forecasting from the 2023 to 2043 period. We considered 3 different employment forecast scenarios. One being the regional employment forecast, and that's for the Tri-County area. Another one that we considered was the historical rate of employment growth in Sandy. And then the other was based on the PSU population forecast for population growth. And so the regional growth forecast and the PSU forecast are both safe harbor options. And that just means that if you use them and for whatever reason this is contested in court, they can't successfully challenge it. And so we ended up using the population growth forecast, and that is, just a hair bigger than what the historic employment growth in Sandy has been. And we use that one instead of historic employment growth because as a safe harbor, it is just a little bit safer to use. So that assumes that employment grows 1.9% per year, which means that Sandy would add about 2,523 employees over the next 20 years. Next slide, please. So then we move into how the forecast for job growth impacts the land need. So we start by taking the 2,523 new jobs that are expected to happen over the next 20 years and look at the types of land uses that those will be in. So in 2023, about 15% of employment was industrial. Employment land was industrial, 24% was in retail commercial, and so on and so forth. And what we're forecasting for 2043 is that there will be a similar share of employment in industrial, which is a growth of about 443 employees. We estimate that there'll be slightly less total employment in retail commercial. It'll still grow, but we'll have a slightly smaller share. And that represents some of the trends that we're seeing in retail commercial going online. We also forecast a growth in office and commercial services. This includes things like restaurants and that kind of thing. And important thing to note here is in the end, retail commercial and office and commercial services do actually get combined into a general category of commercial. And so how they're broken apart right now, it matters a little bit less, but it is useful as we're thinking about employment growth. And so in the table below, you can see that we've taken government out. And that's because government growth in government employment is just the land needs for it are just fundamentally different than for office and industrial. And government employment includes things like public schools, land for wastewater facilities, and that kind of thing. You don't see that in the EOA very much. And unless you're going for an urban growth boundary expansion, it's less important because any kind of government employment needs can locate on something like a residential or commercial land designation. So this leads to our forecast of a need for about 63 acres of industrial land and then 91 acres of the office and retail combined, giving us a total of 154 acres of total land need for employment growth. And that is gross acres, so it's inclusive of lands in the right of way. Next slide, please.
How many acres?
Any questions?
Yeah,
I think
go
that's
ahead.
the next slide.
How many acres do we have is the question that came up from Hans.
Oh, man, so good. Next slide is just gonna be your favorite slide then. So putting it together, you have, we find that you have a 9-acre deficit of industrial land. And so that's just a small deficit and a medium surplus, or what I'd call a medium surplus of commercial land. So about 52 acres extra of commercial land. And so, what does this mean for Sandy? It's important to note that Sandy is not required to address this deficit of industrial land to adopt this, to adopt the EOA. Sandy could do a 9-acre UGB expansion if it chose to address that deficit. But for such a small unmet land, it's such a small unmet land need, it's unlikely to be the thing that you would pursue given how challenging it is to get an urban growth boundary expansion. The city might also want to consider swapping land out of the UGB for land that is more suitable for development, especially given the constraints that you have on existing industrial land. Sandy could also consider rezoning from commercial to industrial. But that's something to be particularly cautious of, because despite the commercial land surplus, you're unlikely to want to move it to industrial unless it's a really good piece of land for industrial and you have a landowner who wants that change. And part of that is because industrial land is generally worth less than commercial. And so most likely commercial will stay commercial and will develop as commercial, or some of it could develop as housing as allowed by Senate Bill 8. And then are there any questions? Okay, I'm going to keep going. So as a part of the EOA, we also have to look at target industries and here, so I've got listed on here the target industries for Sandy. I'm not going to read it out loud, but what you should see is that they're consistent with the Economic Development Strategic Plan. And that, like I said, that's because we were working closely with community attributes as these plans were being developed. So some of these target industries are probably not possible in the near term, given some of the wastewater constraints that Sandy is dealing with right now. And so something like food and beverage processing often requires a lot of water and produces a lot of effluent. And so that may not be as likely in the next few years, but other types of development that require that put less strain on the system could be fabricated fabricated metal product manufacturing. And then professional and technical services, those kind of things are more likely in the near term. Next slide. And so from that, we need to think about what site needs these businesses have, and then consider if Sandy has sites like those. So based on the target industries, Sandy is looking at, the need for small scale manufacturing businesses. These businesses tend to be, you could have something like a business incubator. They might locate in existing buildings, or they might want to develop a building on a small site, which is a small site being 1 to 5 acres. And Sandy does have some of those small sites. Sandy might also have some demand for mid-sized manufacturing. These generally take place on sites that are 5 to 15 acres. And these sites have been more in demand in Oregon. For businesses coming to Oregon, this site size tends to be a size that is desirable. You might see some demand for larger manufacturing, but Business Oregon overall is not seeing much demand for large manufacturing sites, these being things that are over 15 acres. And Sandy is probably not going to have much demand for those large manufacturing spaces, given the distance that it has, that it is from I-5. And then for commercial businesses, of course, you would, commercial businesses expect to have space in existing buildings. And this could be with multiple businesses in them. They might need space in a building dominated by one business, or they might be looking for land for construction of a new building, generally on sites that are 1 to 5 acres. Sandy could have some demand for commercial needs on sites greater than 5 acres. Sometimes hotels require large spaces, or a big box store, but Sandy does have some sites of that size. So generally what we find is Sandy does not have constraints when looking at, does not have constraints due to site size. And then next slide, please. So our conclusion is that Sandy has adequate land for commercial growth and a small shortage of industrial land. Wages in Sandy are lower than the regional average. Changing that will likely require changing the mix of businesses that are in Sandy. And so that would be, less tourism and more jobs in manufacturing and professional services, that kind of thing. And of course, the wastewater system deficiencies that Sandy is struggling with is something that will need to be addressed to support employment growth in the future. So that is the bulk of the presentation, and that gets at the EOA. And so before I move on to talking about comprehensive plan goals, are there any questions?
I don't have any. Does anyone have any questions? All right, seeing none.
Okay. Okay, so moving on to comprehensive plan goals that are related to the economy. You can go ahead and move on to the next slide. As I said, ECHO is working on these goals for the comprehensive plan. We've just started this process, so I don't have policies to share with you. We will share those in the January or February meeting, depending upon when that is. But what I've got listed on this slide and the next are 4 potential goals for the comprehensive plan. We've tried to stay really close with these goals to the information in the economic development strategic plan, since the strategies in there are already statements of policy. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read these one by one, and then once I get through the 4 of them, we can chat about them if you have any comments. So the first goal is a broader economic development goal. Provide opportunities for a diverse range of businesses to thrive in Sandy, ensuring broader access to economic opportunity and maintaining Sandy's high quality of life. Second goal is around commercial. Foster vibrant commercial zones that include a mix of retail options to serve the needs of regional residents and enhance destination appeal. Industrial. Promote sustainable and non-polluting industrial growth that enhances Sandy's economic resilience, supports high-wage job creation, and fosters innovation. And then infrastructure. Ensure that Sandy has sufficient infrastructure capacity to support a variety of employment opportunities, ensuring that land can be serviced in a reasonable time period. And so, like I said, we'll have a number of policies that help kind of tease out these goals a little, you get to these goals a bit more, but just the main questions I have for you tonight are, do these goals reflect your understanding of Sandy's EOA and Economic Development Strategic Plan? And is there anything that you would like to see reflected in the goals and policies for the comprehensive plan that we can think about as we're developing these over the next month?
Input? No input here.
So that's totally fine. If you don't have any input right now, that's great. If you do, or if anything comes to mind later, please feel free to email David and get it to us. But just so that you know where we're going, I think that this gives you a clear understanding of some of the goals that we're pursuing, and that way when we get to policies next month, that might help.
We have a comment
Yeah,
from
we do have
Cal.
those.
What's the infrastructure, we know about the wastewater and it's
Hang on.
being addressed.
Can you turn towards the mic
Sorry.
there?
We know about the wastewater and it's being addressed, but what other infrastructure concerns are there?
I'm not so sure if it's a concern. I mean, wastewater is obviously the one that is top of mind, but when we talk about ensuring that Sandy has sufficient infrastructure, that includes things like road as well, road, water, that kind of thing. And so a broader goal encompasses all those things. We'll have some policies that would be around, I think, some of the more specific pieces, but infrastructure in general would include things like roads and that kind of thing.
I was gonna make the comment that, different topic, but under industrial, where you talk about supporting high wage job creation, I kind of see that as part of the commercial side of it as well. When I think about the industrial, I don't typically associate that with high wage job creation as much as the commercial, you know.
That's a good call out. I think with the high wage and industrial, it aligns with your economic development strategic plan's focus on a couple of different manufacturing industries, which typically have higher wages. But commercial is also a good call out because of things like professional services would locate on commercial land. I think the reason I know the reason I didn't include it originally is because commercial also is your retail and your food service industries, which typically have those lower wages. But I think that's a good call out. Now I can think about how we might include that thought in especially in one of the policies around professional, like attracting higher wage jobs in the commercial designation as well.
Yeah, part of that's remote workers. I can think of two friends, one's an engineer, and one's a software developer, and they work from home.
Yeah, that's a good, that's a good call out too. And so I think that one of some of the policies, especially in the economic development goal, are going to be around what Sandy's role in like in attracting work from home, because those are higher wage jobs oftentimes as well.
And another reason why the Economic Development Strategic Plan calls out industrial for high wage job creation is because it's high wage job creation that doesn't necessarily require a large input into education. So you can have a high school degree and still make a living wage.
It's true.
Yep.
It's true.
It's a good call out. Okay. Well, this is the end of my slideshow, and so we'll be back. David, when will we be finalizing tonight? When we'll be back? January or February?
Well, typically this board meets every 2 months, so it would be the first Wednesday in February.
Okay,
Next
so
week.
likely the first Wednesday in February, you'll get to see me again, and we can talk policies. And I can't see any of your faces, but I'm sure you're all smiling about that.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, if you have any other comments or questions about the EOA or anything that we discussed tonight, please let David know, and I'd be happy to answer them.
Indeed.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Nicole. Still
Thank you,
interested
Nicole.
even the second time around.
I know, better. It's better this time, right? All right. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Nicole.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Is there anything that the city council pulled out of it from the first time around you saw it for you and Chris to?
Chris, I'll let you talk first. He's like, way to go, Lori.
Yeah, but maybe you should go back and watch the city council meeting. They're all right.
I get the notes on
That's
this.
cruel and unusual punishment.
There was a
Presentation.
Oh,
there's a lot of talk from a couple about the data being average data or median data and not being well supported with specificity to, you know, the things like the house pricing and the household wages and stuff. And not everyone agreed on that concept, but it was a picking point of finding some more details and data to support it. Ultimately, I think the biggest thing that was drawn, at least from my lens, was that each time they brought up a specific topic to talk about, like they did tonight, the question was raised is how do we compare to everybody else in the state? And almost every time it came back, we were right in line with the state. We're not disproportionate in any other way around anyone else. There were some shockers, I think, from a few counselors, and I'll speak for myself. Like the household wage was higher than I had thought it was, and I was surprised by that, pleasantly surprised by that. The housing price was lower than I thought, honestly. And from my eyes, so I was surprised by that. But you know, there were a couple different opinions on this specific points of that data, but collectively, when you compared it to the other communities, especially our surrounding communities, we're pretty well in line. You know, with the percentiles of all of those numbers. So I felt like it was a fairly accurate depiction of where we sit. And now what we do going forward, that's left for discussion and debate, and we didn't address it. Lori, I'll let you finish it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing to keep in mind is that the data is all from 2019, right? So it's several years old, and the world has changed significantly since 2019. So instead of getting in the weeds, and again, you know, as Chris said, we had several counselors that didn't like the numbers. To me, you can skew numbers and make numbers look however you want. What this does do, though, is it paints a picture, you know, and regardless of the representation, whether the numbers are low or the numbers are high, you know, the fact that we are pretty much lockstep with all of our neighbors and with the rest of the state of Oregon, you know, just kind of gives you that profile of where we sit today. And, you know, that kind of groundwork where we can develop a plan and create, you know, economic plan that will benefit us in the future. So I didn't get as upset as some of the other counselors did. A couple were really didn't like the numbers. It's like, to me, it just gives you an idea, right? So.
Yeah, that's interesting because numbers are kind of the numbers. You can make anything out of them, great grasp, but they're still coming
Some of
from
it
where
is.
they get pulled from,
Yep.
and you can't. The saying you can't argue in the numbers. We can a little bit, but
We
in
can.
other ways,
Yep.
they are what they are. But 2019, they just don't have good numbers in 2020 and
No.
2021. I wouldn't want 2020 numbers.
No.
Well, I think
2021.
the work from home thing is a
2020.
big deal, and how, I don't know how you quantify it, how you find
For
it.
sure.
Yeah, they're gonna have to find out some other mechanisms or probably put some type of law into effect that employers have to tell you where you know,
Right.
more red tape, but but
It's
honestly,
pretty-
like where I
think
work,
I think it's pretty
a
substantial.
lot of people are working from home, but
Mhm.
they could come into the office too, and it's kind of
Yeah.
like, it's up to that person. So they're not gonna be,
Well, and I think it plays into, as we look at developing a plan that maybe, I mean, manufacturing is manufacturing, right? You can't manufacture from home. You can do some, computer generation and things like that, but
So
you
you
can't
can, you
manufacture
can a little,
a little,
but
right?
yeah.
But,
but not a
But-
big
But
scale.
yeah,
but like, there's a lot of industries now, because I'm sure we all have friends, and I have several friends now that work exclusively from home, and so, as we look to commercial real estate and different things like that, I think we want to be mindful of what those facilities are and how many of those people have the potential to work from home versus, we look at ways to make Sandy better. I think those are things that we definitely want to be mindful of, is what we're bringing in.
Or office sharing space before the whole pandemic, people working from home, I knew what was going on in Sandy, obviously with the fiber and everything else, and what we had here, what it could go to, and you get these other cities, where people want to work from home, but they need that office space that's maybe away from the kids and away from, the life of whatever, or you're having that client come in, or you just need someone to like take the phone calls or collect the mail and share an office space, and rent something for $100 a desk in that area, or $300, whatever it is, kind of like, you have a shared office building, right? But they make them in so many different shapes and forms, and we need to be thinking about that too, because this data didn't pick that out, right?
Right.
Because it wasn't, even though some people have seen that coming forward, it really highlighted it at pandemic and post-pandemic.
So would the transportation tax Sandy transportation tax be a way to look at that? Because I know when I have to enter my employees in the ADP, it asks, does the employee live and work in the area? And it's how we're taxed for the employment. So if a business has an employee working,
But if I am from home,
right,
my employer is not saying anything to the city of Sandy.
but they should be probably.
Why? I live here.
They're not paying the transit.
But you're
tax
working
anyway.
here. I know, but
No, I'm
you're
living
working
here.
here and working there.
I might be, I might not be.
That's what I'm saying. I was just.
well, that's what makes it so difficult.
That's what makes it difficult. There's
No,
no,
it's an interesting question. I see where you're
Yeah,
going.
Yeah.
for sure.
we have people that have jobs from the East Coast that live here before the pandemic even, because we had great
Well,
internet.
Especially now, I've had
Right.
friends leave the state because, hey, I don't have to live here anymore to work.
Mhm.
And vice
But I-
versa.
Well,
Yeah.
but I'm also seeing places, my wife works for Portland Community College. They've got people that have to make the choice, they either come back or they don't work anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are
So
places that are
moving
doing
to
that,
North
yeah.
Carolina during the pandemic was great,
Yeah,
but you can't work from there anymore. You have to be on site. So my gut feeling watching things is in 5 years, we're not gonna be talking about working from home any more than we did before the pandemic.
Could be.
It's just people are not gonna always stay holed up in their houses.
I think you'll have a little bit more than you had before.
Maybe.
Maybe a
The
little.
hybrid thing.
Because there's
Yeah.
certain jobs and
Well, I
we're
think,
seeing it kind of go back at work too. So.
yeah, and to your point, I think in talking with friends of mine who manage or, are in positions where they have employees who are doing both. They said that initially, in the beginning of the pandemic, they actually saw an increase in productivity with people being at home. And
Yeah,
now
totally.
as time has gone by, right,
Mhm.
people's schedules have adjusted.
Just like
Yeah,
everything,
that-
you separate who can handle it and who
That
can't.
productivity level is
How
definitely.
much laundry is
I would-
happening on
Well, yeah,
quote
hey,
unquote
hey,
break?
Oh, yeah.
I can put my kid, or hey, I'm gonna go do this.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll be 100% honest.
I worked
That's
out of
why
my
I
house
came
for
back to the
years.
office.
Hated
When I first started working from home, I was super productive.
Yeah.
And then I noticed the same thing over
Yeah.
time. It
Distract.
tailed down. After a certain point, I said, I gotta go back into the office
Yeah.
because I'm not getting as much done.
Yeah,
My business. you can't work from home, so-
right.
Yeah.
Might need-
Well,
I'm sure they can bring all the kids over to your house.
I guess my question on that also is if we're looking at commercial, industrial and that stuff, working from home, the only thing that addresses any of that is really a safety net.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The rest of it,
Right.
do we care how many people are working from home?
I mean, there's an argument to be made that it's greener to work from home. because
But
you-
I mean, as far
But-
as trying to figure this stuff out.
What I think it affects
you're
your whole
building
median
your-
income then, if someone's working from home that is working for some company in Portland.
They're
Maybe
making
Their
higher
income,
wages.
their
Maybe
better
actually
wages,
outside-
their income would count here instead of in Portland.
Yeah.
But
I think.
And they're probably
Just-
coming out to
Well-
eat at your place or someone else's
Right,
place more because they aren't in downtown Portland where they're
Right.
running.
Right.
yeah, but if they're living here and they're working downtown Portland, they're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
No, because what, they might do
I-
their shopping while they're down there and eat down there and nothing. You
If you're
know.
not driving through
Or-
Gresham, you might not be stopping at the Winco.
Right.
or-
Right.
But, you know, something that Chris brought up that I think we should be mindful of is that the one takeaway that I think we both had, because he and I discussed it, was that the median income was definitely higher than what I expected. And that tells me that there is a more affluent
Mhm.
group that's moving
True
into
that.
Sandy.
Mhm.
And so, you know, with that, a more affluent group typically wants more amenities, right? And
Yeah.
Yeah,
Think about that wheel of, you know, the rat wheel. We have higher pricing housing in Sandy because 80% of our workforce in Sandy is going outside of Sandy to work to make a higher wage. As we build more homes, we're attracting higher income, so we're building bigger homes. We don't have the small homes. The other takeaway from this is that the Sandy job wage is lower than average. So even if you put two low wage average or below low wage average together, they don't make enough median income to even afford rent in Sandy. So it's a twofold problem where you don't have the income in Sandy to support Sandy growth for people that live in Sandy. So they're forced to go outside of Sandy and make more money. And then they'll do one of two things. They'll either move outside of Sandy because they want to get closer to their job, or they'll make enough money to upscale in Sandy, which is to buy the bigger house. And then we don't have therefore we don't have low housing affordability available. And that becomes more and more vacant because there's such a high demand for people that need that low rent that it escalates the rent. And now the average median rent in Sandy is higher than what the average mortgage was in Sandy 5 years ago. And that is catastrophic in my
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That is the city and county of San Francisco in a nutshell,
Mhm.
right there.
Yeah. Or Lake Oswego.
Or like us, we don't
Most places.
So how do you fix that? And you build manufacturing where they pay higher wages, and then they want bigger housing. It doesn't help the unaffordable, and you're not going to attract workers without higher end expectations in those jobs. They're going to want to make a lot of money, right? So how do you do that and then keep prices? So they put these Senate bills in places, and they want us to build, I think she said 35,000 houses annually across the state, and we've been averaging only 10,000 across the state, forever. So that's an increase of almost 300%. But they're not making the builders keep the house prices down.
No.
The prices just keep going up,
Yeah.
and our wages aren't going up because they're going to kill small business. You can't pay somebody $15 an hour this year and $20 an hour next year to keep up with housing and keep your business afloat, right? I mean, we've got to do this respectively, and we can't manage both sides, and that's why I call it the rat cage. It's just it's a round and round circle. How do you do it? And you really got to sprinkle, at least through my lens, a little bit of both. You got to bring businesses to Sandy that help support higher wages and then give benefits, and then you also have and help kind of augment them through some of our programs that we have here in Sandy, and also build and attract bigger business that will bring that higher wage to Sandy and help cultivate us as a town, of tourism that we truly are, where people stop and stay for a day or three, and put themselves here before they travel up the mountain or back down to the city. just my thoughts around it.
Yeah, it's something we can go around and around on, but it's a hard problem to solve. It doesn't solve itself quickly, so. And then you get the political side of it, you know, growth or no growth, or, you know, these things that jump into the conversation too, so. Well, thank you for the discussion. I'm just looking at the time, because one thing I do
Nope, you're good.
is I like to keep track of the time and get you out by 8. So.
Wow, round 2. Glad I brought the second one.
See if our audience wants that.
Care
So,
for anything.
so
We can share.
why don't we go to, jump back to new business, and we can talk about, new member appointments. So I can, speak to a couple of that. So, Marcel, will be readjoining, well, I should say, will be put to the council to be reappointed to the city council. And Aaron as well is, we're through interviews yesterday, and will be being presented to the council. So don't want to make anything official because we can't do that here on this board, but just to let you know that
I'm sure there'll
that'll
be a lot of resistance.
be being towards that. And then we have one other person,
Darren Wegener.
Darren
Oh,
Webb,
good.
Yeah.
who
Okay.
sits on the
The planning commission.
planning commission,
Yeah.
and I thought it was really great.
He's my neighbor.
Oh,
Is he really? Oh,
Yeah,
that's
so-
cool.
lives next door. Yeah.
So, you know, having the perspective of city council on here, but then also having the perspective of
Planning
the
commission,
someone that's been on the planning commission and understands that from that point of view too. So I think it'll be a really great additions, and thank you for coming and spending tonight with us. That shows a lot to me, at least, from sitting on council for so long and seeing new appointees and seeing them show up to see what it's really like right before.
He's still getting that in there. I
Yeah,
just
yeah,
love
of
it.
course
He's
he's.
still getting it in.
He'll-
I know, but we gotta get done because I gotta go run. So
So what, the guy, the mountain bike guy that's never shown up, is he?
he won't
not.
be continuing with us.
Okay.
Anyway, so, and I think Paul Reed was on the board but didn't reapply.
He did not reapply.
And then we also had
He's trying to spend a little less time in the state of Oregon, so.
the other guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Paul too.
No, Paul is.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
wow.
And Robbie.
What's the, why can't I think of his name? Everfresh dude.
Oh,
Oh, Kurt.
Oh, Kurt.
Yeah, Kurt.
Kurt, I know he's spending a little more time in the sunshine too.
Kurt's, I think, 90% Hawaii.
Yeah, I think he stepped off.
how,
the-
does anybody know how he's doing? Like,
I
health-wise?
don't,
He's
I don't.
still doing,
Okay,
Oh, I didn't realize he was under the weather.
yeah, he's had a lot of health issues.
We can talk about that
Yeah.
another time.
outside of
Yeah.
being on video. So, but so yes, future welcomes, hopefully.
Awesome.
Yep. Yeah.
Well,
Thank you for that.
And
And
congratulations on it.
Yes, yes.
so keeping
yeah, now.
keeping on there, not necessarily need to go around the room, but is there any shout outs? You know, is this a new thing here?
This is our Christmas beer. It's a Doppelbock with cinnamon, ginger, and orange peel.
Like a week.
We do.
I am running.
And we have done it for the last 4 years. This year it came out 8.8%.
Wow.
Oh.
Beefed it up a little bit. Next year, I'm hoping to do it in March and let it sit in a bourbon barrel until
Oh.
November when we release it.
Those are my favorite.
Mhm.
So you all should keep on your calendar, the Saturday of Thanksgiving is when we do our Christmas beer release. And it's live music, German food, and ends up with a brass band doing Christmas carols, which is great fun.
Especially after a
And-
couple of pints.
Well, we only serve these in
Oh.
10-ounce pours. That's, yeah. But I have one shout out. I've been looking at my books and everything, and I posted on Facebook the other day. We've been in Sandy officially 5 years now, and we've tripled our business.
Awesome.
Since we moved to
Outstanding.
Sandy.
That is outstanding.
So thank you, Sandy.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Well, not so boring.
Well, thank you. You're not the typical business owner that may, you know, you had a business plan that, you know, was pretty solid coming in, so.
No. But yeah, it was, it was a little rocky for a couple of years. Everybody knows that.
I'm glad
But-
things didn't work out with your former partner, Boring.
I'm very happy.
Yeah.
Me too.
I'll put that on the record that I upgraded my business partner and life is much better.
Well, I also think you've, what's the word I'm looking for? You've really mastered the space that you have down
Oh,
there.
Yeah,
you know,
indeed.
Totally.
And really developed it, made it into something.
And marketed it.
I
It's
think
a great
that's-
funky
I
space.
think that's super cool.
Yeah.
Christmas lights go up maybe Friday
Nice.
under the eaves, so we'll be lit up around the back.
Oh, cool.
I don't know that they'll ever come down, but
That's fun.
That's
we'll
okay.
worry about that when, you
That
know,
stays with the funky. right?
Where,
Yeah.
where are you guys located?
right behind Mad Dog's Hobby. They're in the corner of
Yep.
Bluff and
Plaid Pantry.
Plaid Pantry parking lot.
Yeah.
I have done one thing that I guess should be told to everybody. The Sandy police actually told me to do it. I've blocked off part of my driveway that goes down the back driveway because I had two different clients. If they had been 2 steps farther forward, they would have been hit at about 40 miles an hour.
Yeah.
People cut that corner. It's against the law to cut that light on Bluff. But they come up and they go racing through my parking lot, so I've built a barrier out. My garbage company keeps destroying it on Thursdays, but now we've put big yellow cement blocks out there and a pole, so I think the garbage truck won't go through it again.
Nice.
But yeah, so we're kind of, our parking lot's kind of one way. But you can get in from both sides.
I have cut that light once or twice. However, I don't go through that. I go through the other.
Plaid Pantry.
Yeah, well, I don't think Plaid Pantry's real happy with me either, because honestly, the sergeant told me, he says, well, my wife's in the insurance business and she'd tell me it's better their parking lot than yours,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that somebody gets hit in.
Well, now I
Yeah,
know what
so-
officer talked to you. That's fantastic though.
So,
His wife and I went to high school.
okay,
so.
yeah, we're doing a little traffic control down at Boring Brewing, because I really don't want someone to get hit in my lot.
No, you don't. No. And I think I think safety is always precedent, so good on you.
So sorry if you have to go around Plaid Pantry back into mine. We'll be moving the parking curbs so they're faced the right way.
Yeah, I was gonna
too.
say, that's the only annoying thing.
Where do you go and you back in? That's for easy exit.
You can't exit that way.
If you were a Girl Scout leader, you would have had to back in all the time, like my wife had to. She used to laugh about that all the time.
All right, any other?
But we just celebrated 8 years last Sunday.
No
Yay.
kidding.
Yeah, 8
It's been
years.
that long?
Yeah, it's
Crazy.
been that long. We've been open, so,
Fantastic.
Another good business plan.
yeah.
And I love your story about using our market analysis. And
Oh, yeah. Yeah, David was there from the beginning.
I wish I was that smart. Just moved in.
What's that?
Yeah. Well, yeah, you were already
Yeah.
fairly well
Yeah,
established.
Sandy market analysis.
well, that's what we were talking about earlier,
Yeah.
and we'll talk about here in a little bit.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was back in 2014.
That it needs to be
I
updated.
first started talking about like 2014.
That sounds about right, but
David
wow.
Nichols.
Yeah.
Absolutely, you can.
But
Almost
yeah,
Go without, totally.
Santa's
No.
coming to visit this next Sunday
Awesome.
from
Nice.
11 to 3. And
Sure.
finally hired an employee that might work out. So, looking for more.
Excellent.
That's only part of that study. I forgot to mention that she said there's a good supply of employees, and I don't agree with that.
No, and I actually thought about you guys, not you guys specifically, but just the service industry in general
It's
in
horrible.
Sandy. I know it is, and statewide. But I did, in both presentations, the service industry came to mind, and I mean, it's affecting more than even just the service industry, but I think the service industry is getting hit disproportionately,
Who's
so.
It
telling
took
me,
me 4 months to find a qualified
Yeah.
employee.
who was telling me that they have too many employees? Oh, Sandbar.
Oh, Sandbar does?
Yeah,
Sandbar
he's
has too
doing
many.
great right now.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so.
Right, any other? Well, we'll move on. Can we get a sewer and water systems update?
Yes,
I asked
you
for this
may.
'cause I know that not everything can be spoken, of, but what can be spoken of, we'd love to have an
Yeah.
update.
So I'm hoping most of this will make sense. So I talked with Jenny Coker, our Public Works Director, and AJ Thorne, our Assistant Public Works Director, about both of these things within the last week, and just told them that our chair was asking if we could have kind of an update on both the water systems and sewer systems. So here's what we came up with. We'll start with water systems. One, the Public Works Department has closed a number of loans recently, and staff is still working on this right now. They're currently finalizing the new 30-year wholesale water agreement with City of Portland. And actually, AJ was on the phone talking about that today when I walked into his office. We're negotiating a design scope and fee for the Portland pipeline connection. Council approved this at the most recent city council meeting. They're also about to order a skid-mounted treatment system, and I went back and looked at my notes. What is that? So what this is basically, AJ said, just think about it as like a shipping container. And they put all the filters in the shipping containers to make it more modular, so they can move the container out and just move a new one in. This, yeah, it puts the filters in something similar to that kind of container, makes them more interchangeable. This is something that they ordered for Alder Creek, and it'll also give them the capacity to monitor creek levels for the first time. We've never had that capacity before, so that's pretty cool. They're moving ahead with a number of stabilization projects. The SCADA master plan, that stands for Systems Control and Data Acquisition for monitoring. No idea what that meant. He said this is the system that will allow staff to monitor all the different facilities and all the water quality at all the different facilities from one place.
Can I stop you just for
Yes,
one
please.
second? So just so you guys know, part of the reason that it's important for us to be able to monitor like Alder Creek is looking for a sustainable water source for the city of Sandy, so that we don't have to rely in the future on the city of Portland, so that we have our own water source.
That's what I was gonna ask,
Yep.
if we can expand, we have 2 sources now, right?
Correct.
And is there potential to expand those?
Yeah, so one of the things that Jenny's been tasked with, and of course, we're constantly burying her, but
Right.
one of the things that she's been tasked with is that we do have water rights. But we have dilapidated water rights, and then there's some difficulty with some of the rights that we do have. And so we're improving some of the stuff that's east to us, monitoring Alder Creek is one. So that we can look to the future, so that we have our own sustainable water source.
Right.
And then we can begin to
Backup only.
Yeah.
Use Portland as only a backup.
Because right now it's providing a significant amount, or
No, we, for the most part, there's, times in the summer where we rely on Portland, and of course, then there's various times, I don't know exactly the ebbs and flows of it all, but where we rely on that, and then certain areas, and of course, we have to have things like, backup plans. We have to have, in the event of a wildfire, we have to have sustainable water, that we could use to put those fires out, and things like that. So it's on the city, of course, to supply that, and which is why we've developed plans with Portland. That causes some consternation for some people, and I understand. But we are looking long-term to have our own water,
So
so.
that's good. That's a question.
Yep.
We have the ability to be self-sustainable.
Yes, that's
from
what we're
our
looking
2
for.
sources. What's the name of the other source?
It's Alder Creek, and then we have.
Brown Hill Springs.
Brown Hill, that's it.
We actually have water rights on the salmon, but
We do.
when
but the
I was on
season is
council
difficult.
a very long time ago, when I was just a babe. We were told by our council at the time that it would take too long to go through the courts and stuff to be able to probably use that, because we'd be fight to, even though we had owned all these rights on the Salmon River. And that's why we actually tied in with Portland back then.
Did we give up those rights or?
No, we
No,
did
we still
not.
have
We
them.
still have
I
them,
mean,
but
something you
It is, it's
Some
still
don't
there.
ever get rid of
Nope.
it,
yeah,
Nope,
you don't get rid of it, but
Nope.
you need to.
But
it-
there'd
it
be a
can
lot
take-
of, there'd be a lot of EPA and environmental and fish and.
And it
Long,
just-
who knows in the future.
Some other ones, it
Absolutely.
can take more than a decade to,
Yeah,
even
but-
when you start, so, but.
But just
don't
so
get
you
rid of
guys know, that's what that is. and
Okay, good.
there's-
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Cool. And yeah, and by the way, counselors and you too, Chris, if you want to interject in any of this, please do so, because you guys probably understand this orders of magnitude better than I
Or
do.
just completely confused by it, I'm not sure.
So back to water. There was also a catastrophic repair done at Sandercock Reservoir. There's a massive leak where the creek was coming in. So they repaired that. They repaired a large void underneath the facility, and they repaired a bunch of damaged rafters in the building. We ended up avoiding catastrophic failure there. They were able to make all those repairs before anything failed. So we're good there. Currently, let's see, they're currently doing a pilot test to remove chloramines from treated water from Portland. And then there's they need to install 2 systems at Alder Creek and Brown Hill Springs, or we can get one system to cover both. They're still trying to determine what would be the best choice there. And finally, new capacity for the water system will be determined during the first quarter of 2024. So
And I can tell you that during all of this rain that we've had the last few days, we've had no overflows.
I was wondering about this.
Yep.
I was,
We've had,
because I would.
including today, we've had
That's
no
awesome.
overflows, so that's huge.
Yeah, that's
huge.
a massive and great testament to our public works crew and
Indeed.
Ginny and everyone in the past and the council to, invest in that way of helping with it. But so that leads right into the sewer aspect of things.
Is that from like a lot of the repairs that they were doing, I think
Yep.
last year,
Yep.
2 years ago, where they
Yep.
were putting smoke in the
I-9.
lines and stuff?
Yeah, with all the, unfortunately, and I mean, I'm paying them too, but they increased water rates, and I know it's hard for people with those, to stomach that, but all of that money has gone to those improvements.
I don't think people understand.
They don't,
that.
so,
It's been.
but I
deferred for
still
20 years.
appreciate that it's hard.
Indeed. So for sewer, finished construction at the existing wastewater treatment plant. That was first phase, the first phase of construction is complete. They also finished construction of 4 basins. So that means fixing the leaky pipes. I'm sure you guys have heard about this. They had sewer mains in certain areas that were cracked and allowing groundwater to seep in. So that was one of the first things the Public Works started tackling in this process, and they've made a lot of progress on that. So both of these combined was phase 1A, and that is now complete. The consent decree has been finalized, penalties have been paid, and Jenny wanted me to make sure to tell you that she submitted 3,505 pages of stress testing data for the feds.
That's right.
EPA and friends are in process of reviewing what we say is the additional capacity of the system. We were supposed to hear back from them in mid-November, and we are still waiting as of today. We're still waiting to hear back from them. So that will end up giving us the additional capacity we have to work with going forward. Work on our facilities plan amendment, which is what will identify what we work on next, should be done in the first quarter 24. We've just, AJ also told me today, we've just selected 3 on-call engineering consultants. We have urgent repairs that need to be done to keep the system reliable. This includes replacing 2/3 of the ultraviolet disinfection system. And finally, AJ and Thomas are doing a manhole grouting program right now. So they're sealing the manholes around the city so that additional groundwater can't get into the system.
Like this
Some in
week.
my neighborhood, yes.
Oh, really? Yeah.
So with the sewer system, are they doing, is the idea is that they're doing some temporary fixes to get us by for a while before a more significant upgrade, or is this?
Are we still building a new plant
Yes, absolutely.
off Sunset down there?
That I don't know. I mean, you probably know better than I.
To be determined.
To be determined.
Yeah. Okay, that's kind of what I thought. I didn't know if it's.
Yeah.
So that's.
Timeline on that.
Will be longer.
5 years?
Yeah, no, it's gonna be within, there was like 5-7 years. I mean, it's a lot longer.
So the only reason that I answered it that way is that we have a plan in place, right? But, and I'll speak for myself, and there's other counselors that feel the way I do. If we look at what Redmond's done, and Redmond, even though they're in a different, right, they get a lot less rain than we do, but what they've been able to do is create a vast green space with trails where they have a natural filtration of the water instead of creating more plants. And then that would take us out of the need potentially to dump sewage into the Sandy River. And so we're still looking at those options as well.
Pineville.
Or Pine Belt, excuse me, I said Redmond, yeah, Pine Belt. So, I mean, there's some different ideas out there, but yes.
Cause that's gonna
That's
affect
still
everything.
Yeah.
Land use, who's coming in.
Yeah, which leads right into the moratorium update.
Oh, yeah. Page 1. So this was something that I discussed with Kelly on a number of different occasions, but this is the final update that I got from him as of today. We have completed the stress tests of the sewer treatment plant, and EPA DEQ is now analyzing the results. Moratorium was extended by City Council again at the 11/20 council meeting until June 20th, 2024. However, depending on the analysis review and negotiations with DEQ and EPA, that the existing moratorium could be repealed and replaced with a new moratorium. We're not sure when it will be repealed or replaced yet. We're hopeful we can provide a more exhaustive update at the EDAB's next meeting. And then also a couple of quick points. Development Services has committed to letting my department know when this updated information is updated in real time, and what information within those updates may be released to you guys. And then I've also secured a commitment from our director, from Kelly, that he will come in person, once we've secured approval to begin releasing sewer permits, and update you in person, and that'll happen sometime next year.
The moratorium is not completely shutting off everything. We
No.
still have, how many permits? We expanded those permits. 300 permits. So this idea that the moratorium, we put a number out there, but there's still, people can go out and build developments. And
Yeah,
build
so
commercial
everybody
and-
that was already in the queue,
Yeah.
people who've already given a plan, those developments are all moving forward.
If you had a developer that wanted to come in and develop the Lundin Skipper land right now, they'd be put on hold.
They
Wow.
would potentially be put on hold. There's
Yeah.
a few things that would go into that, and I think depending on what it was,
Right.
there's potential for negotiations. Is
Because-
that fair, Chris? Is that fair to say?
I was gonna say, they have plenty, with the most recent expansion, we got plenty to take care of what's in queue, and there's extra ones coming. They're also very confident that we're gonna exceed the number again before the deadline of the extended moratorium. It depends on when builders start to submit their applications, because it's FIFO, first in, first out, gets approved. So if somebody comes in early and bids a project with a lot of connections, more than likely they'll get approved. But, because right now builders are kind of holding back. They're not putting in a lot of work for Kelly to look at. But as soon as that faucet opens, those first 5 or 8, depending on their size, are probably going to suck up all the openings we have, and everybody past that will be on hold. So it just depends on when that faucet gets opened, if that makes sense.
And the type of business that may go in, and I think we're all thinking 362nd Bell
Right.
Street area, right? You may have a big box that may not take, have that many
Might need a certain amount
toilets.
of connections.
Or they may have needing a lot of them, so. I don't know.
It'd be more concerning if that 362nd does mixed development, retail on the bottom and residential up top. That's going to require a ton of connections.
Yep, so it'll just depend on type of development, but thank you, I appreciate the update. And I think one nice thing, I'm a big infrastructure person, building fiber is an infrastructure piece, right? Internet, building roads, building sewer, and what is that gonna mean for our kids? We'll have a really strong infrastructure that will last, another 50 to 75 years, like before.
And then they did, I didn't hear you say, maybe Lori, you remember the number, what they quantified, but she said that the previous rainfalls that we recently had, our number would have been 10. And I don't remember what the number was related to, but she said today, when they tested it, it was at 5. So the millions of dollars we've already spent cleaning those lines up and closing them and making them weatherproofed is working. Taking whatever that number that went from 10 to 5, reduced it by half. So we're already seeing major improvements in our flow.
Yeah, at 10, we were overflowing essentially, so, which was getting us fines from the EPA. So, I mean, we're at half of what we were at, which is basically telling us that the improvements that we've made are able to take in not only what's coming in from the city, but also just the enormous amount of rainfall. So it's big. Yeah, it's big.
All right, well, I'm gonna keep us on track because I would like this to, get out of here by 8. And so on that note, the retail market report, and we can talk about that in a little bit of discussion because I wanna give a
Yeah.
recommendation out to the council.
So I had a chat with members of the administration department about this. And here's what I was told about the retail market report. There is no funding available for this report in our current budget. However, admin staff stated that one way this could be funded is by using the council contingency fund. They don't want to dip into urban renewal funding for obvious reasons as well. So if this is something that the board would like to take up, it was suggested that the way to approach this would be maybe for one of the city councilors on our board to bring this up during council reports at a future council meeting. However, if this is something that the board wants to push forward, we'd have to take a vote or request council approvals or something along those lines. Also, another thing I wanted to add to this, because we were having a little bit of a discussion at the beginning, is that my understanding was that the funding that we had set aside for a retail market report back prior to the pandemic, when the pandemic happened, we put that on pause because any numbers that we're going to get regarding retail are going to be skewed numbers due to the pandemic. And then after a while, after it went on for a while, the money for that report was actually put into our pandemic response. I'm understanding that that may not be the case.
Yeah, so Chris, do you remember? So Jeremy and I were having a conversation before the meeting began, because the last two budget cycles, and I realize you've only been present for one, but the last two budget cycles, we had put money aside for this very thing. And now there's some question of whether that money was used for something, but in my mind, they would have had to come back to the budget committee to reallocate that money, and I don't remember that happening. So in my mind then, there should be 4 years total, so 2 biennium worth of money for this report. Do you recall anything different?
That, I was gonna say, that's exactly how I remember it.
Okay.
And that's how I remembered it as well. And I remember not only that, I was pleasantly surprised to have Kathleen actually advocating for us to have this report.
Sure.
Because how old's the other one?
2015.
Yeah, we need one.
Yeah, we need more. Yeah, we should.
For a city our size, it's typically recommended that you do 2 of these reports a decade. Because 5 years is about how much time it takes for the retail scene to change enough that it would
So
warrant.
much
a
has
report.
changed.
And yeah, I would argue that even more has changed. than
2014
that.
numbers probably, right?
Right.
So one of the reasons why we put it on hold at the time, because of the pandemic, it just started 2020, and we were going into it, and we're like, oh, because that was our number one thing. Remember, those that were here, we had binder, and we were all gun ho, and then all of a sudden the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
And that was one of the first things that we were going to address. And then actually
It was
you
the
know,
first thing we were gonna.
yeah, it was gonna be the second after that, but kind of flip those roles with some other studies we were doing. Because we knew the market was gonna change, and why do something and waste the money and have the market change, because we didn't know what retail, we didn't know what the world was gonna do. So in that, in looking at time, I'm seeing nodding, and I'm hearing the context. Is there an appetite or a proposal to say that we would like to request that the city council look at funding this through whatever means they need to, which would be that, and knowing that David was shared with us that it would be about 23 to 25,000, he thinks, from the recent quote.
Current quote I got is for 22,500, but there's a $3,000 add-on to that if the board wants to explore that. I'm kind of neutral on the add-on. It would be helpful, but considering our financial situation right now, it's not necessary.
So I think, sounds like the money's there.
It should
And
be.
we gotta push a little bit, and if it's not there, they need to say where it went.
Well,
You
if
show where it
if
went.
it's not there, it's not there. I don't wanna, right now, I don't think it's our thing to go hunt it down, but to request that it could be, it can be,
Yeah.
it can be.
Where did it?
It can, I'll let the council deal with that.
Yeah.
But we have that process, but then there's also, so it did get spent, whatever it may have done, it still need to come out of the other funds. But at our point of view is that we're requesting that this be done in
Yes.
conjunction with the ZNO and to take advantage of that, the economic, the EOC, I'm sorry, the EOC, in conjunction with that, because that was the plan all along. We had to get this done, and it was in the plan of the process the entire time to wait. We specifically changed the orders to wait to have this done after this was in place and was advised that way.
It's a pretty important piece to
Yes.
get businesses coming.
Yeah.
And I think it's a perfect example to show Hans's story, willing to have them share your story of how it was used to make this business that now used it in his 8 years in and is, is still.
Well, and I think even more importantly is that, council, this weekend, we have a urban renewal retreat. And so, that report specifically in my mind factors into urban renewal and where that money goes. So it's super important to get it done.
Yeah, it was critical for me to get funding, because I had
Yeah.
hard numbers that I could show, well, here's the median income, here's the amount of kids
Yeah.
of this age and that age, and this is why I think we can make this much money, and blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And will it help with some of the development on Bell Street as well?
Oh, yeah.
In terms of
Oh,
driving
absolutely.
around?
Yeah.
I think so.
Oh,
Yeah.
This is the time to
It's a
do it.
no-brainer,
You
really.
know,
Yeah,
this
it's-
is-
I mean, if it's as detailed as last one was, it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a piece of the puzzle to begin with.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it was a piece and it was all part of the
You have to
plan,
know
so
who you've got.
very surprised at that information.
Yeah.
But if the information is there, regardless of that, then it's up to the council but so I guess all hands or eyes that would approve requesting that the city council go forward and find the resources to buy the market analysis. And I would say with the $3,000, the 25,000, I think it's
Okay.
very reasonable, but I'll leave that to the council. All
There's
those
an-
in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
There's also an attachment in your packet too that I wrote a little summary of what a retail market report is if you're not familiar with it, and why it's important. So give it a read if you're interested.
let the record show that was a, Chris, was that an aye for you? Okay, thumbs up. That was a unanimous aye, thumbs
The
up.
thumb kind of disappears back and forth. I don't know.
Let the record,
Sorry, it's an eye.
And
and the council reps can also take back that as a unanimous.
Absolutely.
And
Yep.
no reasoning behind
Yep.
that, so. Well, I want to appreciate all of your guys' time. We want to make sure we are, not abusing your guys' time here, so I appreciate it. And sometimes we may go over, but I like to keep it on the nose, so with 3 minutes now to spare, there's nothing.
Because Jeremy's gotta go get his running.
yeah,
I do.
well,
I'm
it's
actually
important.
I gotta finish my beers.
Yeah, for the adjourn, if there's no other comments, is any other comments?
No.
If not, we'll adjourn.
Arjun?
Thank you.
Thank you,
Lots of
sir.
information.
Yeah.
Christmas.